Hey guys, tonight we're setting out on a quiet trail through the highlands of Tibet, where the wind moves like breath through the folds of prayer flags, and time doesn't feel quite so hurried. The stars haven't come out yet, but the sky is beginning to dim, brushing everything in that dreamy twilight blue. You're not sure what pulled you out here. Maybe it was the heaviness of the day, or maybe just the need for stillness. Either way, you're walking one slow step at a time toward something you can't name yet. You probably won't survive this, in the sense that the version of you clenching through deadlines, traffic, and existential emails might have to loosen its grip a little. Don't worry, that part of you could use the rest. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. It's always lovely to know who else is walking this path with us. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself walking on a narrow footpath lined with wild herbs, juniper mint, something else, earthy and sweet. Your boots crunch lightly on the gravel as a distant flute sound, perhaps a shepherd's, curls through the thinning air. The mountains around you are vast and oddly gentle, like old guardians who gave up being stern long ago. Up ahead, a cluster of faded prayer flags shivers in the breeze, each one whispering something only the wind understands. You pause beneath them, watching how they catch the dying light. Red, green, blue-white, yellow, each a color for an element, each a faded prayer, unraveling gracefully over time. Isn't that a little like you? Worn by the days, maybe, but still fluttering. You turn a corner and see a figure seated on a rock ledge just above where the path narrows. He looks like he's been waiting, not impatiently, but like a stone waits for sunlight. His robe is simple, maroon and gold, and one hand rests on a walking stick carved with spirals. His face is the kind of old that doesn't look tired, just unbothered. "You're late," he says, not unkindly. But then again, you're also exactly on time. You're about to reply, but he raises one hand, not to silence you, but to guide your gaze toward something. Off to his right, nestled between stones and shadow, sits a mirror. An old one, oval, with a brass frame and a cracked back. Dust clings thickly to its surface, yet the way the twilight plays on it, there's a shimmer just beneath. He smiles and pats the stone beside him. "You sit. Everyone brings dust," he says. "Even monks. Especially monks. You don't know what that means, but your shoulders soften a little anyway. The mirror glints again. He reaches into a cloth pouch and pulls out something small. A threadbare cloth and a thermos. He pours 2 tin cups of yak butter, tea, thick, salty, warming. Even before you drink it, you came looking for peace, he murmurs, or maybe just for quiet. Either way, good. The tea is strange, but comforting, like soup, and memory had a baby. Buddha once said, he begins that the mind is like a restless monkey, always jumping from branch to branch. But if you hand the monkey a gentle task, say, watching the breath, it begins to settle. Not because you tamed it, but because you stopped chasing it. The wind shifts. You notice how your own breath feels heavier than you expected. Almost like your lungs were tired of holding everything. The Lama, he hasn't told you his name, leans closer. Do you know what it means when you start noticing the breath, he asks. You shake your head. It means you've begun to return. The sky darkens into a soft indigo. One star peeks through tentative and shy. A goat ambles by on the hill behind you. It's chewing something. It looks equally wise and ridiculous, which honestly might be the ideal ratio. You laugh quietly. The Lama chuckles too, then adds, "Don't trust anyone who's never laughed at a goat. They've missed something important." He picks up the mirror with reverent hands and holds it toward you. "Go on," he says. "Look, you do, but instead of your face, you see a riverbank, a child. You think it's you, sitting alone, legs swinging over a stone. There's no sadness in the scene, just stillness, the kind you forgot existed. You blink, and the mirror goes dull again. Dust," he says, gently blowing across its surface, "always comes back." You want to ask what the mirror is, or how it works, or how he knew to find you here now. But instead, you ask, "Why me?" He nods as though he's been waiting for you to ask that one, because the dust on your heart hasn't hardened yet, and because your soul hasn't forgotten how to ache gently. That's the best time to begin. A quiet stretches between you, like a soft blanket. You're not in a hurry to leave it. A few moments later, he rises surprisingly spry for someone who looks older than most of the hills. "Come, there's tea to finish, and stories to spill like warm butter." As you stand, he adds, "One question to keep in your pocket tonight." You turn to him. "Where do you go when your thoughts stop chasing each other?" You don't answer. You're not sure you can. But something in you whispers, "I'd like to find out." The Lama leads you off the trail, down a narrow slope where the grass grows high and soft as hush. You follow boots brushing the blades, feeling the day exhale around you. The sky's grown deeper, now midnight blue, inked with strokes of silver. The first real stars begin to shimmer, not blinking, just gently, watching. You don't speak much. He seems to like it that way. And truth be told, the quiet fits better than any words you could offer. After a short while, you reach a low stone structure nestled against a ledge. It isn't quite a home, more like a shelter made of stacked slate and patient silence. A butter lamp flickers inside. There's no door, just a hanging cloth that sways in the wind like a lazy metronome. He beckons you in. The room is small, maybe 10 steps wide, 7 across. A woven mat, a kettle resting on a flat stone, and in the corner, a small altar. On it sits a bowl of rice, a brass bell, a photo of an old teacher, and a tiny carved Buddha whose smile makes you think of warm bread. He settles on the mat and gestures for you to sit across from him. The kettle hisses steam, spiraling upward like a prayer, forgetting its words. He pours 2 fresh cups and sets yours down with care, as though even tea deserves dignity. You're wondering what the mirror is, he says without looking up. You give a soft nod, not what it is really. He continues, but what it means. There's a difference. You glance around the space, humble, spare, yet not lacking. Your breath begins to deepen in your chest naturally. He takes a sip. In the stories of our lineage, he says there's an old saying, when the Lama smiles, the mirror begins to clear. He smiles just then, and you feel something warm loosen between your ribs. The dusty mirror shows nothing but what you've hidden from yourself. And sometimes, when it's very still, it shows you what you forgot you already knew. He taps a knuckle lightly against his chest. It's not magic, just Dharma. Then, with a rustle of his robe, he begins a story. There was once a woodcutter, he says, eyes, distant voice, soft. Not a wise man, not a foolish one, just a tired man who cut trees in the forest each day to survive. One morning, he found a broken mirror at the base of a cedar. A strange thing to find there. Wouldn't you say? You nod, sipping your tea. It tastes fuller now, almost like honeyed smoke. The mirror was cracked, but caught the light in a way that tugged at him. So he brought it home, set it on a shelf, and each night after work, he looked into it, not for his reflection, but for something else. He didn't know what. The Lama smiles again this time, with the mischief of someone who knows the punchline already, and little by little, he continues. He started to change. He still cut wood, still fed his goats, but his voice grew quieter, his heart softer. He found he didn't argue as much, didn't rush. What happened, you ask? The Lama shrugs. He watched himself stop being someone else. That was enough. You sit quietly, the story settling into you, like incense smoke curling into cloth. The Buddha once said, the Lama adds, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. But we love to seek. It makes us feel alive, even if it makes us miserable. He chuckles at the irony, takes another sip. Tell me, he says, have you ever looked into your own eyes? Not to judge or fig, but simply to see. You think back. Bathroom mirrors, Zoom calls, flash-lit selfies. But really seeing, you're not so sure. I thought not, he says gently, as if reading your pause. Most of us haven't. We're always polishing our image, but never meeting our gaze. The butter lamp flickers again, casting gentle shadows across his cheekbones. He looks at you, and it doesn't feel like scrutiny. It feels like weather, natural, present. Another breeze rolls in through the cloth doorway, bringing with it the scent of pine and something else, sandalwood maybe, or memory. He sets down his cup and leans forward. May I, he asks, reaching for your hands. You nod. His fingers are dry, but warm. He turns your palms upward, then places them on your knees, open like small bowls. Just breathe, he says. Don't chase it. Don't shape it. Let it come as it pleases. So you do. The moment stretches, softens, expands. No words, just breath. And then, very faintly, from the altar corner, the sound of the small brass bell. But it doesn't ring. It hums just for a moment. A note so quiet, it might be imagined. He smiles. She sings when you're truly still. You open your eyes. You hadn't realized they'd closed. He releases your hands and sits back, folding himself like a coat put away with care. The mirror, he says, can only show what the heart is ready to see. So I smile, not because I know something, but because I don't need to. You let that one settle in too, like warm stones in your pocket. A pause. Then his voice low. Here's something to wonder. Tonight, if you stopped needing to be anything at all, who would you be? Outside, a gentle rustle. A moth lands near the butter lamp. Then another, drawn not by heat, but by the invitation of quiet light. The Lama begins to hum. Not a melody, really, just a tone, low, grounded. It vibrates through the floor, into your legs, up into your breath. You don't hum back, but your whole body listens. The kettle sputters its last steamy breath, and you both sit in the gentle aftermath of sound. The Lama leans back against the stone wall, his knees drawn up, arms draped loosely around them. He sighs, not tiredly, but with that kind of long, sweet release that makes you think of deep pools or old songs. Let's have a proper cup of tea, he says suddenly, as though the universe just reminded him of something important. He rises in one smooth motion and disappears through the hanging cloth. You hear the rattle of a clay jar, the pop of a cork, and the scraping of stone on stone. A few minutes later, he returns holding a new thermos and a small tray. The smell hits you before anything else, rich, buttery, deeply earthy, like warm hay left in the sun, but with a whisper of salt and smoke. Yak butter tea. He pours it again, this time into sturdier mugs. The first cup was for arriving, he says. This one's for staying. You raise the mug to your lips. It's thick, almost broth-like. Not sweet, not bitter, just strange in the way that feels ancestral. The kind of taste that doesn't care about your opinion. You sip anyway. It settles in your stomach like a blanket freshly pulled from the dryer. He watches you amused. Everyone makes a face, he says. It's tradition. You both laugh. Yours ends in a small sigh. The Lama smiles. Now, a story. He doesn't wait for your agreement. He just begins as though the tale were sitting beside you already and only needed to be nudged into the open. Long ago, he says, before emails and enlightenment retreats, there was a village deep in a valley, wrapped in clouds. In that village lived a young monk, not a great monk, not a terrible one, just a forgetful one. You raise an eyebrow. Forgetful. The Lama nods solemnly. He often lost his shoes, sometimes his robes, once even his own vow beads. But what he never forgot was tea time. Every afternoon, without fail, he brewed the most perfect cup. He takes a slow sip from his own mug. One day, the abbot noticed, asked him how he remembered the tea, but not his robes. What did the monk say, you ask? The Lama grins. He said, because tea is what reminds me I am alive. The rest I can remember later. You chuckle, and the warmth of it feels strange in your chest, like a bird stretching its wings for the first time in years. Sometimes the Lama says, swirling the tea in his cup, it's the simple rituals that keep us tethered to the real. The breath, the steam rising from a cup, the way your body softens when you let it be. You feel it now, that softening, like a coat slipping from your shoulders. The Buddha once said, he murmurs, drink your tea slowly and reverently, as if it is the axis on which the earth revolves. You look down at the steam rising from your cup. Tiny clouds, slow ephemeral worlds. He leans back again and closes his eyes for a moment. The candle on the altar flickers. The walls hold the silence like an old friend. You're not broken, you know, he says, eyes still closed. The words catch you off guard. You act like something's wrong with you. Like peace is somewhere outside, waiting. But it's not. You're not missing anything. You're just tired. You stare at the flame. You think of your calendar, your unread messages, your unspoken thoughts. You think of all the masks you've worn this year, some to protect, some to hide some, because you forgot how to take them off. Everyone's tired, you whisper. He opens one eye. True. But not everyone knows it. Another pause. The kind that doesn't ask to be filled. Then he continues softer now. In my village, we used to say, when your heart is weary, sit with someone who remembers the stars. You look at him, he looks back, and for a moment, you remember the sky. You have something to teach too. You know, he says, but not with words. You frown, puzzled. Then how he shrugs. With how you listen, how you hold space, how you show up with your whole self, even if that self is messy. Outside, a bird trills a single sleepy call that sounds like it forgot the rest of its song. The Lama sets his mug down gently. Let me ask you this, he says. When was the last time you gave yourself the kind of care you offer others? You stare at your hands. That long, huh? He teases, not unkindly. You smile, a little crooked, but real. Tonight, he says, you're not here to learn. You're here to remember. You let that line wrap around your spine like a scarf. He reaches into a pocket of his robe and pulls out a small square cloth, a prayer flag that's been washed nearly white. This used to carry a prayer, he says. Now it just carries wind. Still sacred. You hold it in your hand. It flutters slightly, faintly. Your worries, he says, gently will pass too. Not because they don't matter, but because they move. Everything moves. You stare at the cloth. It weighs less than thought. Then, in a voice softer than anything, yet, he says, is it possible you're already enough just sitting here, breathing without trying at all? And in the quiet that follows, you feel your chest rise and fall. Not like effort, but like ocean tide, like home. The night deepens like a slow inhale. Outside the stone shelter, the wind softens, curling around the structure as if to listen in. You sit with the Lama beneath the glow of the butter lamp, its flame moving ever so slightly, like it too is breathing with you. He places his mug aside and closes his eyes. For a few moments, he doesn't speak. Neither do you. Something about the silence feels intentional now, like it's been invited, not just tolerated. Then quietly, he says, the quietest teachings are always the hardest to hear. You wait. Something in you has learned to stop filling every pause with sound. I once asked my own teacher what the greatest lesson he ever learned was. He continues. He said, "It came to me in a moment when no one was speaking, so I didn't forget it. You let your own breath quiet. It starts to feel like the silence isn't empty. It's rich full of something finer than thought. A hush, not of absence, but of presence. You see, he says, most teachings are like rain. You hear them, feel them, maybe even remember the shape of the droplets. But the real ones, he taps his chest gently. They soak in so deep, you can't separate them from yourself. The candle flickers again, a small golden wave against the stone. He stands up slowly and motions for you to follow. Come. The real classroom is outside. You step out into the night air. It's colder now, but not unfriendly. The stars above are scattered like forgotten blessings, and the moon, just a sliver, hangs like a quiet note at the edge of a song. He leads you up a small rise where flat stones are embedded in the earth, creating a natural terrace. The grass is short here. The wind moves low. Then he stops, lowers himself cross-legged to the ground, and pats the space beside him. You sit. Together, you look out across the valley. Below, darkness pools between ridges, and a soft hush, like the sound of breath against cloth, rises from the world. This, he says, is the best teaching I can give you. You look at him puzzled. He gestures at everything. This, the night, the breath, the not speaking. You want to say something. Maybe thank him or ask for more. But the words catch like leaves in a stream. Instead, you breathe. You feel the cool air enter your nose, the warm air leave your lips. Then he begins to hum again. It's the same low sound from before, but out here, under the stars, it seems to stretch wider. It fills the space between you without invading it. After a time, he lowers the hum and begins a story in that same even tone, more felt than heard. There was a woman, he says, who had no words. You blink. She lived at the edge of the forest, woke each morning to the birds planted. Her garden swept her floor. But she never spoke, not because she couldn't, but because long ago someone told her words must be perfect to matter. He picks up a small stone and rolls it between his fingers. She kept silence like a precious jewel. For years she lived this way. People visited her sometimes, left food, asked her questions. She only smiled. No one ever heard her voice. You lean in, drawn into the hush between his sentences. One winter, he continues, a child wandered from the village and got lost in the snow. The woman found him just before nightfall, near the tree line, barely breathing. He pauses. The wind seems to wait with you. She held him close, rubbed his hands, wrapped him in her shawl. And then she whispered his name. A pause. That single word, just his name, carried all her years of silence, all her care, her pain, her love. It was the most sacred sound the boy would ever hear. He remembered it until the day he died, The Lama lets the story fall into the stillness. You close your eyes. You imagine that woman, her breath warm against frost, choosing that moment, that word. He speaks again, barely above a whisper. The Buddha said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." You let those words dissolve into you. Then gently he asks, what part of you is still waiting for the perfect thing to say? Before you're willing to be real, you don't answer aloud, but something within you shifts. Not like a breaking, more like a thaw. He hands you the small stone he was holding. "Keep this," he says. "It was warmed by a story. Let it remind you that sometimes the quietest things last the longest." You place the stone in your pocket. It's smooth, heavy for its size, grounding. For a while, neither of you speak. You just sit, watching the sky, letting the night do what nights are made, for softening the hard edges of the day. Eventually, he rises and offers you a hand. "Come," he says. "Let's go back before the stars start gossiping." You laugh. He winks. They always do. Back in the shelter, the butter lamp is still lit. The air feels warmer now, or maybe you've just remembered how to breathe properly. You curl up on the mat, not with the tension of a visitor trying to behave, but with the ease of someone who has somehow been welcomed. The Lama sits nearby, fussing with his prayer beads. "You can sleep soon," he says. "But first, another question." You nod sleepily. Have you ever listened so deeply that your listening became prayer? The candle wavers. The night presses gently against the cloth door, and your eyes begin to close. You dream, though not of places or faces. It's more a texture than a vision, a softness brushing the inside of your thoughts like silk across bare skin. When you wake, it's hard to tell how long you've slept. Time feels less like a straight line now, and more like breath in-out pause. The Lama is already awake, of course. He sits cross-legged in the corner, a bowl of rice in his lap, spooning it in without urgency, as if each bite is a gift to be unwrapped slowly. "Morning," he says without turning. You snore like someone releasing ancient grief. You blink, startled. "I snored." He smiles at his ice. Only a little, but it was noble. You both laugh, and just like that, the weight in your chest feels lighter. He stands, brushes off his robe, and says, "Come, let's go to the river." You follow. There's dew on the grass now, glistening like scattered pearls. The path dips through a grove of whispering pines and emerges beside a slow, winding river that flows like a dream retelling itself. The water is clear, the stones smooth. The air smells of wet earth and morning. The Lama sits on a flat rock and pats the spot beside him. You sit. "Do you know the story of the girl who gave her sadness to the river?" He asks already, gazing into the ripples. You shake your head. "She lived in a village where people smiled with their mouths, but never with their eyes. Every morning, she woke with a heaviness she couldn't name. She tried to speak of it, but the words stuck in her throat like old bread. He pauses and dips his fingers into the water. One day, an old woman from the edge of the woods handed her a smooth river stone and said, "Tell it your sorrow. Then give it back to the river." You glance at the water. A leaf drifts past, effortless and true. The girl thought it was silly. The Lama continues. But one evening, when no one was watching, she took the stone, whispered into it all the things she didn't know how to carry anymore, and let it fall from her hand into the stream. You can almost see her kneeling, trembling, then suddenly calm. She came back the next day with another stone, and another the day after that. Each one a piece of her grief transformed into something round and quiet. He leans closer. They say the river still remembers her. You don't speak. You just reach down and pick up a small round stone. It's cool in your palm. The weight of it is oddly comforting. She wasn't giving her pain away to forget it, he says. She was giving it back to the earth, to be softened, carried, and eventually released. You roll the stone in your hand. You think of the things you've carried, some so long they've forgotten their own names. The Lama reaches into his robe and pulls out a faded pouch. He opens it and reveals a small pile of smooth colored stones, reds, grays, speckled blues. "These are mine," he says. Each one has held a truth too heavy to hold alone. He selects one and tosses it gently into the river. It sinks with a soft plunk. Sometimes, he says, compassion begins with laying something down. You stare at the stone in your hand. Then, without overthinking, you bring it close to your lips and whisper something you hadn't planned to say, not even to yourself. Then you place it in the water. It doesn't resist, just disappears. Buddha said the Lama murmurs, "Drop by drop, the water pot is filled. Drop by drop, the heart is emptied." You feel a strange tightness in your throat. Not sadness, not joy, just a quiet hum that seems to echo in your ribs. What would it feel like? He asks softly to release your suffering. Not like a scream, but like a breath. The river keeps flowing. The leaves keep drifting. A dragonfly zips past your ear with the sound of tiny cymbals. You sit there for a long time, not talking, just watching, listening. Eventually, he speaks again. "I used to think awakening would be some great thunderclap," he says. "A booming revelation. But it turns out it's more like dew evaporating. Quiet, invisible. You only notice it's gone when you stop looking for it." You smile. Maybe you say, "That's why it feels so peaceful." He chuckles. Maybe. Or maybe you're just sleepy from the yak butter tea. You both laugh again. The kind of laughter that makes your lungs feel like they're finally being used properly. As the sun rises higher, casting golden fingers across the water, he stands. "Come," he says. "You've laid something down. Now let's walk a while and see what's left." You rise with him. The path ahead isn't new, but it feels different now, like it's waiting to be walked by someone a little lighter. And as you take the first step, you find yourself wondering, is letting go a loss or the beginning of space? The wind picks up soft as a lullaby, and the river sings quietly behind you. The path meanders gently uphill, weaving between low stones and tufts of wild heather. You walk beside the Lama in easy silence, your feet adjusting to the earth as though they've finally remembered how to tread without rushing. The sun has risen just enough to cast long, slender shadows, each one like a quiet double walking just behind its owner. The Lama taps his staff on a stone as you pass a soft rhythm, like a heartbeat. You're about to speak when he stops suddenly. There, tucked between two leaning stones, is the mirror, the same mirror, oval, brass-framed, dusty again, though the wind should have blown it clean. You blink. How did it get here? The Lama smiles. You think things must stay where you last saw them, to be real. You don't answer. He kneels beside the mirror, blows lightly across the surface. The dust swirls, some of it drifting into sunlight, like pollen in a breeze. He wipes the glass slowly with his sleeve, and then, without a word, offers it to you. You hesitate. Then you lean in. This time, the image that forms isn't a memory. It's something in between, a moment you don't recognize, but somehow feel you, sitting beneath a tree. Older, maybe, or just calmer. There's a book in your lap, not being read, just held. Around you, golden leaves fall in silence. You touch the mirror's edge, and the image fades like breath on glass. It doesn't show futures, the Lama says, just truths you haven't lived yet. You hand it back, palms suddenly damp. He lays the mirror down gently and sits cross-legged on the grass beside it. Do you know what happens when a mind becomes quiet? He asks. You shake your head, waiting. It begins to reflect, not like a machine, but like still water. He picks up a blade of grass and lets it fall across the mirror's surface. It catches the light just right. A dusty mirror still reflects, but only what's on its surface, a clear one that shows the depth behind the image. He turns to you. You saw something today, not with your eyes, but with your heart's memory. That's what makes it real. The wind picks up. This time, it doesn't feel like it's passing through you. It feels like it's with you. Buddha said, he continues, with our thoughts, we make the world. Speak or act with a pure mind, and happiness follows like a shadow. that never leaves. You sit with that quote a moment, speak with a pure mind. Not a perfect one, not even a clever one, just pure. The Lama smiles. But purity isn't about being good. It's about being clear. You've been cloudy lately, haven't you? You nod. The confession doesn't sting. Then he says, "Let's sit and let the clouds pass." You both grow quiet. Not the awkward kind, the restful kind. For a long while, you just watch the mirror. Eventually, the Lama pulls out another story, soft as a lullaby. There once was a child who lived by the lake. He begins, and every day he would go down to the water and throw stones. Plop, plop, plop. Trying to hit the same spot twice. You smile. You've been that child. But one day, the Lama says a fisherman passed by and said, "You'll never hit the same spot, boy. The water's always moving. Even if you do, it won't be the same water." The boy frowned, confused, but the fisherman just kept walking, leaving the child to stare at his own reflection, rippling and shifting, and never once holding still. You let that image sit with you. Do you know what the boy did the next day? The Lama asks. What? He stopped throwing stones, and he just watched the water. And for the first time, he saw the fish swimming underneath. You glance back at the mirror. It now reflects the sky, pale blue and open. That's how meditation works, the Lama says. First, you try to control the ripples. Then, you learn to watch. Eventually, you see what's always been beneath. You exhale slowly. Something in your chest eases. Not gone, just eased. You reach for a pebble, small and dark and warm from the sun. You don't throw it. You just hold it. The Lama stands. "Come," he says. "Let's keep walking. The mirror will follow." You furrow your brow. "Follow," he chuckles. "Truth has legs. Doesn't need a backpack." You shake your head, amused, and follow him along the trail. As you walk, he adds, "Here's something worth wondering today. What would your mind look like if you stopped trying to fix it and simply let it reflect?" You smile softly. The sun reaches higher, the shadows grow shorter, and somewhere behind you, the mirror waits dusty again, perhaps, but content. You walk for a while without speaking, letting the rhythm of your footsteps and the occasional cry of a distant bird fill the space. The Lama hums something low and tuneless, more like a vibration than a melody, as if he's harmonizing with the ground beneath you. Soon the path leads to an open field where tufts of wild grass ripple like a soft sea. In the distance, the sky and earth seem to touch, blurred by heat and distance and dreams. A feather floats by on the breeze, just one small and white, dancing through the air, like it has nowhere urgent to be. The Lama points to it with his staff. "There it is," he says. "What?" "The lesson." You look at the feather, puzzled. It's just a feather, he grins. Exactly. It tumbles higher for a moment, then drifts, turns, sways left. A swirl, a dip, a rise. You watch it move slow and aimless and strangely mesmerizing. You think about your own life, your calendars, your alarms, your careful structuring of everything. You try to grip everything the Lama says softly. Control the outcome. Shape the wind. You nod slowly, eyes still on the feather. But wind doesn't listen, he says. And feathers, they don't fight. He walks to a nearby rock and sits legs folded under him, hands resting on his knees. Clinging, he says, is like trying to hold a feather in a storm. The tighter your grip, the harder it slips away. You sit beside him, thinking of all the things you've tried to hold. Relationships, identities, plans, ideas of who you should be by now. Sometimes, he says, we're not suffering because of what's happening. We're suffering because we refuse to let it pass. The wind picks up again. The feather lifts and dances once more before vanishing into the horizon. You're not the storm, he adds. You're not even the feather. You're the space that allows both. A long silence follows. It stretches without discomfort. Then the Lama speaks again. There's a story about a scholar and a silk worm. You smile. He always has a story. This scholar, he begins, was renowned for his knowledge, had read every sutra, memorized countless verses. But his mind was always racing, always analyzing, always solving. You can feel that tension in your own chest, the need to figure it all out. One day, he visited a simple hermit who was spinning silk on the porch of a hut. The scholar asked him what the meaning of life was. The Lama leans in, eyebrows raised. You know what the hermit did? You shake your head. He handed the scholar a silk cocoon and said, "Unravel this." You chuckle. The scholar picked and pulled and poked, but the threads kept breaking. Finally frustrated, he said, "It's too fragile. I can't pull it apart without destroying it." The hermit smiled and said, "Exactly." You blink. The lesson lands. You see the Lama continues. Some truths aren't meant to be unraveled, just held, like a feather, like a cocoon. He stands and dusts off his robe. We suffer, he says, because we think peace is something to win, not something to allow. He starts walking again. You rise to follow the image of the drifting feather, still dancing in your mind. You glance down and find a real one caught in the grass beside your foot. It's tiny, almost translucent. You pick it up and twirl it between your fingers. "It's beautiful," you say. He glances back with a wink. "So are you. When you stop trying so hard." You shake your head, laughing. He adds more seriously. The Buddha said, "Let go of what has passed. Let go of what may come. Let go of what is happening now. Do not try to figure anything out. Relax right now and rest. You walk beside him, the feather still between your fingers. The field begins to narrow into a winding path once more. Insects buzz lazily, wings flickering in sunbeams. The breeze carries the scent of something warm and green, maybe juniper, maybe time itself. Then the Lama asks, what would happen if you stopped holding the story of who you think you are? You feel the feather again, weightless, undemanding content to be moved. You tuck it behind your ear, and for the first time in a long while, you don't feel like you're chasing anything. You're simply walking, breathing, being. The path carries you further into the folds of the hills, where snow still lingers in shadowed hollows, refusing to melt despite the morning sun. The Lama walks ahead with easy grace, his robes catching in the breeze like old sails. You keep pace, noticing how the silence here feels even deeper, as if sound itself is reluctant to disturb the stillness. Soon the trail opens onto a wide field edged by tall firs. At its far end stands a row of small lanterns, round, delicate things made from rice paper and weathered wood. Some hang from crooked poles. Others rest directly on the snowy ground, their wicks long extinguished, though each one holds a memory of light. The Lama gestures toward them. This is where the monks used to come in the deep of winter, he says. Not to meditate, not to chant, just to place a lantern in the snow. You look around. But why? What for? He walks over and kneels beside one of the lanterns. Not to push the dark away, he says, just to bless it. You feel that line settle in your chest like a stone dropped in deep water. Not to push the dark away, but to bless it. The darkness doesn't need fixing, he says, brushing snow from the lantern's base. It needs witnessing. He picks up the lantern, holds it close to his chest. There's a teaching, he adds, that says even a small flame, if lit with compassion, can warm an entire valley. He looks at you, but only if you stop trying to light up the whole world. All at once, you sit beside him, feeling the crunch of cold earth beneath you. The snow around the lanterns is uneven. Some lanterns tilt, some have collapsed entirely. It wasn't about perfection, he says. It was about presence. Then he begins a story, soft as breath on glass. There was once a boy whose mother passed away in the middle of winter, he says. Every year after, on the night she died, he would place a candle in the snow outside their home. Just one. You imagine it, one flickering light in a sea of white. The villagers asked him why he didn't do something bigger. A shrine, a prayer, a fast. You can already guess the boy's answer. He said, "She lit a candle in me. I'm just keeping it company." You close your eyes, heart aching gently. in the best possible way. Buddha said, the Lama whispers, thousands of candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared. The lantern in his hands creaks softly as the wood settles in the cold. You're allowed to bring light, he says, but not by banishing the dark, only by being with it, kindly, gently. He places the lantern back in the snow and pulls out a small box of matches from his robe. Would you like to light one? You hesitate, then nod. You take the match, strike it. The tiny flame flares to life, then settles. You touch it to the wick of the nearest lantern. It catches, slowly, a curl of smoke rising before the glow builds. It's a soft light. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, but it warms the snow around it ever so slightly, and it makes your face glow too. You light another, then one more. The field remains mostly dark, but not entirely, and for the first time, that feels like enough. The Lama stands and brushes the snow from his knees. Compassion, he says, doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to show up. He starts walking again, his footprints leaving shallow impressions in the snow. You follow, leaving your own next to his. As you walk, you glance back. The lanterns burn quietly in the field, like soft, silent prayers offered without urgency. Do you know what makes a lantern holy? The Lama asks suddenly. You look over. What? He smiles. It doesn't try to shine forever. You chuckle. Is that your way of saying, I burn out too much? He shrugs. If the flame's too bright, you miss the stars. The trail leads back into the trees, where pine needles fall in slow spirals, landing silently, like dreams returned from long journeys. Here's a question for your walk today, he says, as the trees close gently around you. Can you bless your darkness without trying to change it? The air smells like pine and something sweet like peace cooling on a windowsill. And in the hush that follows, you feel a quiet part of you glow steady and small. The trail narrows as you wind into a forested valley. Tall pines sway overhead, whispering secrets to one another in a language made of when and memory. Their trunks rise like quiet sentinels, and between them, shafts of sunlight cut through mist like blessings from an unseen hand. The Lama walks ahead, steady and silent, his robes barely brushing the ground. A goat trots alongside him now, white and shaggy, with a casual indifference that only goats and old monks seem to master. You blink. Where did the goat come from? The Lama looks down. He's been with us a while. You just started noticing. You raise a skeptical eyebrow. I think I'd remember a goat. He grins. Not everything important introduces itself loudly. The goat makes a low, unimpressed sound, as if it agrees. The path flattens, and you reach a clearing where a fallen tree lies stretched across the trail like a sleeping giant. The Lama pauses, then settles onto the log with a satisfied sigh. The goat plops beside him. You sit too unsure if this is rest or lesson or both. There's a tale from the cliffs near my childhood home. The Lama begins brushing moss from the bark about a mountain goat who sat still when everyone else ran. You lean in. The goat lived among a large herd. Strong, swift, proud animals who prided themselves on their ability to leap from crag to crag. One day, a lion came to the cliffs. The herd panicked, bolting across the rocky slopes, scattering into the highlands. You can imagine it. Hooves clattering dust, rising heartbeats thundering. But one goat didn't run. The Lama says. He stayed exactly where he was, chewing on a patch of stubborn mountain grass. You raise an eyebrow. Why? The Lama shrugs. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he had a crick in his leg. Or maybe he'd just learned that panic rarely changes the outcome. You smile. The lion stopped. The Lama continues, surprised, confused. It circled the goat, growled low, flashed its teeth. But the goat, still chewing, still blinking slowly. He chuckles, and you know what happened next. You shake your head. The lion turned and left. It didn't understand what it couldn't scare. The forest holds still around you, the story landing like dew on needles. The Buddha once said, the Lama adds, like a solid rock is not shaken by the wind, so the wise are not moved by praise or blame. You let the words echo inside. Most of our fear, he says, is fear of feeling fear, not the thing itself. The goat, as if on cue, stretches out its legs and yawns. You laugh. He gets it, the Lama says, patting the goat's side. Stillness isn't laziness. It's trust. You think of your own habits, running from discomfort, trying to outpace anxiety, leaping from distraction to distraction. What if he continues? You could meet fear, not with battle, but with presence. Just sit with it. Let it see you're not playing its game. You imagine yourself at your desk inbox, overflowing phone, buzzing like a restless hornet. And instead of scrambling, just sitting, breathing, blinking slowly, like the goat. You smile. It sounds absurd, you say. It is, he replies. But so is trying to outrun a lion down a cliff. The goat sneezes. It feels oddly profound. Stillness doesn't mean doing nothing, the Lama says. It means choosing not to react from panic. He reaches into his robe and pulls out a tiny bell, no bigger than a walnut. He holds it by a frayed red string and lets it swing. It doesn't ring. Not yet. He holds it toward you. Try, he says. But don't strike it. Just let it move. You hold the bell. The breeze passes through the clearing. On the third sway, it lets out the faintest note, so soft it barely exists. There, he says, that's the sound of stillness being touched, not shaken. You hand it back, and he tucks it away with care. Then he turns to you and asks simply, can you let fear pass through without giving it your voice? You close your eyes for a moment. A leaf falls nearby, brushing your shoulder on its way down. The goat rises and wanders a few feet ahead, munching lazily at a bush. We'll keep moving soon, the Lama says, voice gentle. But not because we must, just because it's time. You sit a moment longer, soaking in the stillness that no longer feels like absence, but like presence, refined. When you rise, the air feels clearer somehow. Not because the world has changed, but because you're no longer clinging to every ripple. And as you continue walking, you realize stillness isn't a pause in the noise. It's the quiet strength beneath it. The sun sits high now, filtering through the treetops in thin golden ribbons. You walk in silence beside the Lama, your footsteps soft on the pine-covered ground. The goat follows a little behind, occasionally stopping to sniff at a root or scratch an itch with lazy dignity. The path bends and leads to a ridge where the forest thins and the sky stretches wide again. You pause at the edge. Below, the land rolls out like an open palm, slopes stitched with stone walls, prayer flags, and distant terraces dotted with barley fields. The horizon hums. The Lama settles onto a flat stone and gestures for you to do the same. This is a good place to ask big questions, he says, his voice wrapped in the breeze. You sit beside him, letting your eyes wander across the vastness. It feels like the kind of view that doesn't just show you something, but quietly asks you to remember something you forgot. He speaks again, softer now. We've talked about fear, stillness, letting go. But now I want to ask you something harder. You look at him, eyebrows slightly raised. He meets your gaze, calm and steady. Is emptiness really empty? The question lands like a small bell struck inside your ribs. You glance back out at the sky, suddenly unsure what that word emptiness even means anymore. He seems to hear your thoughts. Most people think emptiness is absence, he says. Loss, a blank, a hollow echo. But that's only half the story. He reaches down and scoops a handful of wind-blown dust from the stone surface. He lets it fall through his fingers, tiny grains catching the sunlight as they drift. Buddha spoke of emptiness not as a void, but as openness, spaciousness, the absence of fixed identity. He gestures at the valley below. See all that? The trees, the clouds, the goat chewing on my sandal. You glance back. The goat is indeed investigating his foot, with calm curiosity. All of it, he continues, is empty. Not meaningless, but free of self. Not frozen in identity. Always changing. You take a breath, the concept swirling slowly in your mind. Emptiness, he says, is what makes a cup able to hold tea. What makes silence able to hold sound. What makes your heart able to love again. You think of times you felt hollow, those deep, aching voids when the world felt distant and you felt missing. But now you wonder, were those moments of emptiness really just space waiting? He smiles. There's a story, he begins, about a monk who carried a jar wherever he went. He would show it to people and say, "Look, my jar is full of emptiness." You chuckle. People laughed at him. Of course, he goes on. Until one day, a child asked, "But if it's full of emptiness, doesn't that mean it's not empty anymore?" He raises an eyebrow. That's the paradox. He leans back on his elbows, squinting at the sky. The moment you try to own emptiness, it disappears. It's not a thing. It's a doorway. The wind brushes your face like a cool hand. Most suffering, he says, comes from trying to cling to what can't be held. Your identity, your pain, even your healing. You stare at your own hands, recalling how tightly you've gripped certain stories. I am anxious. I am failing. I am behind. Each one, a sentence you've carried like a brick in your chest. Let them go, he whispers. They were never meant to be held forever, only visited. He sits up again, his voice light. Besides, have you ever seen someone carrying their whole house on their back? You grin. Only in cartoons. Exactly, he says. But we do it with our stories every day. The goat sneezes, startling itself, then looks affronted. You both laugh. You're not here to become something new, the Lama says. You're here to remember that you're already spacious. He closes his eyes, face turned toward the sun. You follow suit, the warmth on your face, the wind through your hair, the sound of the distant valley. Below it all flows through you. Nothing clings, nothing stays. Everything moves, and it feels good. Then, with eyes still closed, he asks, what if your heart isn't broken, but just too full of fixed stories to let anything new in? You open your eyes. The world hasn't changed, but it feels like the edges are softer now, as though the sharp lines of who you're supposed to be are dissolving a little, making space. You both rise. The trail ahead dips gently into another grove. The Lama speaks without turning. Let's keep walking. Emptiness doesn't fill itself. You smile at the contradiction and follow him lighter than before. The trail dips again, and you descend into a valley of silver grass and humming insects where the wind moves like a whispered song between the blades. The Lama walks slowly now, as if even the path deserves reverence. There's no hurry here. Time has softened around the edges, like parchment left out in the sun. At the base of the hill, you reach a wide, flat plain, ringed by smooth stones and silence. The sky above is vast, an endless blue, with no roof, no ceiling, no edges. The Lama turns to you and gestures upward. There, he says, that's your mind when you stop trying to build walls around it. You follow his gaze. The clouds drift lazily across the open dome of sky, each one appearing, changing, dissolving, without a hint of drama. Nothing is held. Nothing resists. You've been trying to think your way to freedom, he says. But freedom isn't something you find at the end of a thought. He walks into the center of the field, then sits cross-legged in the grass. You do the same, the blades cool and fragrant beneath your palms. There was once a crow, he begins, who lived in a temple courtyard. He watched the monks each morning, bowing, meditating, chanting. He thought, if I copy them perfectly, I'll find peace too. You smile. You already sense the lesson coming. The crow began mimicking the bows. He'd sit still during morning chants. He even stopped stealing rice. For a time, he was the most well-behaved crow in the Himalayas. You laugh softly, but still, the Lama says his mind stayed restless, loud, like claws scratching the inside of his chest. He pauses. One day, a young monk sat beside him. The crow, tired and frustrated, flapped his wings and cawed. Why isn't this working? You raise an eyebrow. The crow could talk. In stories, he replies, completely serious. Everyone can talk. You chuckle again. The monk said, because you're still trying to fly inside a cage, you built yourself. A long silence follows. Above you, a hawk drifts across the sky. No flapping, no effort. Just gliding. The Buddha said the Lama murmurs, just as a bird leaves no tracks in the sky, the awakened mind leaves no trace of itself. You watch the hawk vanish into the blue. No map, no need. He turns to you. Freedom isn't the absence of responsibility. It's the absence of self-made prisons. You nod, thinking of all the cages you've designed. Perfectionism, overthinking, self-doubt, wrapped in productivity. He smiles. We build the cage. We forget it was ever open. Then he leans back on one elbow and adds, you know, there's a reason most temples don't have roofs over the courtyards. You glance around the open field, the limitless sky, not just because it's cheaper. He adds with a wink. You grin. It's to remind us, he says, that the mind has no roof. You can build walls all day, but the sky doesn't care. You lay back in the grass, arms spread, feeling the way the sun warms your face and the wind tickles your fingers. The openness is dizzying at first, like standing too close to a cliff's edge. But then it settles. like floating, like letting go of a grip you didn't know you were clenching. The Lama is quiet beside you. The goat has flopped into a patch of grass nearby, chewing lazily. You don't need to speak, not for a long while. Eventually, he turns his head toward you and whispers, almost as if sharing a secret with the earth itself. If there are no fences in the sky, why do we keep building them in our minds? You breathe out slowly, as though releasing some long-held plan you didn't know you were following. The clouds pass, the sky watches, and for a moment, you feel what it's like to simply exist without needing to explain yourself. No walls, no roof, just air, just now, just this. You sit up slowly, the weight of the sky still resting gently on your shoulders. The Lama stretches his legs with a low groan, half human, half old tree, and flicks a blade of grass off his robe. We'll go east now, he says, brushing dust from his knees. There's a place I want to show you. Smells strange, but teaches well. You fall in beside him, walking across the open plain toward a low rise where stone steps peak from beneath moss and thyme. As you climb, a warm scent begins to drift on the breeze, earthy and sweet, with a faint hint of citrus and soap. The goat trots ahead, surprisingly nimble for its bulk. At the top of the rise, you find an old platform. No walls, no roof, just a wide, flat surface scattered with saffron-colored robes, drying on bamboo racks. Small wooden basins line the edge, some filled with water, some with bubbles. Nearby, a monk sings softly while scrubbing a cloth. Her voice so faint, it seems to hum with the wind. The Lama gestures grandly. Welcome to the Dharma laundry. You blink. This is where monks wash their robes, he nods, and their minds. You look confused. He laughs. Not literally, though a good scrub never hurts either. He dips his hands into one of the basins and splashes water on his arms. The robes, he says, are sacred. Yes, but they also get sweaty. Tea stains, goat hair. You know, you grin. He picks up a saffron robe, holds it high to inspect it in the light. The Dharma is like this, he says. Worn, washed, used again. Not something to keep folded forever. Then, with that same gentle rhythm of storytelling, he begins. There was once a monk known for his spotless robe. Not a crease, not a mark. He'd clean it daily, brush it with pine needles, even sing to it. But he never wore it. You tilt your head. Why not? Too afraid it would get dirty. You sigh. You already understand. One day, a child visiting the temple asked him, "If your robe never wraps your body, is it still yours?" He pauses. The monk had no answer. You watch the breeze catch the robes on the line, setting them swaying like soft flags of impermanence. Buddha taught that everything is temporary. the Lama says. Even teachings, even robes, even you. He splashes water on your foot, smirking. Especially you. You laugh and flick a droplet back. So I shouldn't try to stay clean, he shrugs. Stay true. The rest will wash off. Then he grows quiet for a moment, as if listening for something beneath your thoughts. Dharma, he says, is not meant to be kept precious on a shelf. It's meant to wrap you, get wrinkled, absorb your sweat, then be cleaned and used again. He hands you a soap bubble wand, like something out of a child's pocket. You raise your brow. He nods. Try it. So you do. You dip it into the soapy water and blow. A single perfect bubble drifts into the air, round shimmering with violet and gold, floating like a brief prayer. It catches a sunbeam, then bursts with the softest pop. See, he says, sacred. You grin. That's not Dharma. He tilts his head. Isn't it? You pause. Maybe it is. Maybe anything that catches the light just before vanishing has a kind of holiness. Buddha, said the Lama, adds quietly, this body is like a foam, a mirage. See it clearly and go beyond sorrow. You exhale. The soap bubble felt so real. And then, not at all, he continues. We try to make everything solid. Identity, pain, even peace. But all of it, just like the robes, just like the bubbles, it's meant to move, to pass through. You watch the bubbles rise, each one brief and radiant. You wonder how many beautiful things you've missed, waiting for them to become permanent. He rinses a robe, wrings it out, and hangs it on the line. Water trickles from the hem like a soft goodbye. You're not meant to stay clean, he says. You're meant to live, to love, to grieve, and then to be washed in the stream of your own awareness. He turns to you with a half smile, and then, if you're lucky, hung up to dry beside someone else's story. The goat sneezes. Again, that too is sacred, the Lama says, without missing a beat. You both laugh. Then, without prompting, he asks if everything beautiful is temporary. Does that make it less real or more? You don't answer right away. Instead, you pick up a robe, wet and sun-warmed, and hang it gently beside the others. The fabric smells of soap, sun, and old breath. You smile and let it sway. You leave the Dharma laundry behind robes, fluttering like saffron wings in the breeze. The scent of soap and sunlight follows you down the trail, clinging to your sleeves in the nicest way. The goat trots ahead, full of purpose as always, though you're not entirely convinced it has a destination in mind. The Lama walks beside you, staff tapping gently against the stones. He doesn't speak right away. Sometimes it feels like the silence is part of the lesson, like space between wutas in music. Eventually, he says, Do you know why the villagers were afraid of the boy? You glance sideways. What boy? He smiles faintly. Ah, then it's time for the story. You nod. These stories always come like gentle thunder. There was a boy, he begins, in a small mountain village. He had a wide, bright laugh and a habit of laughing at things no one else found funny. You smile already. You like this boy. When the well ran dry, the villagers wept. The boy laughed. When hail ruined the barley, they shouted to the sky. He laughed. Why, you ask? They thought he was strange, insensitive, maybe even cursed. He pauses, but the boy wasn't cruel. He was kind, so kind, that he once rescued a beetle from drowning in the rice wash. You both step over a crooked route. The trail narrows, but the air feels more open. Finally, the village elders confronted him. Why do you laugh when we suffer? They asked. And what did he say, you ask? He said, because samsara keeps trying to fool us, and every time we fall for it, I can't help but giggle. You blink. That answer stirs something in your ribs. Something like confusion. Something like awe. The Lama continues. The Buddha taught that samsara, the cycle of suffering, is a bit like a joke. We forget is a joke. We keep reacting like it's all so serious. You walk a few more paces. He adds, the boy saw the pattern. Rise and fall. Gain and loss. He saw it all as part of a dance we pretend is a battlefield. So he laughed. The Lama nods. Not to mock, but to wake. His laughter was a bell no one wanted to hear. You let that sit. The idea of laughing, not to dismiss suffering, but to stop mistaking it for eternity. He laughed at his own heartbreak too, the Lama says. Laughed through tears. That's how you knew it wasn't just foolishness. It was freedom. You stop beside a flat stone and sit watching the goat nibble at a clump of dandelions with a kind of noble disinterest. What would it take? The Lama asks for you to laugh the next time things fall apart. Not out of denial, but out of clarity. You're not sure, but you want to find out. The wind shifts, bringing the smell of dust and pine needles. Somewhere nearby, a bird chirps in a rhythm that sounds suspiciously like it's giggling at a private joke. The Lama sits beside you, pulling his robe tighter. Sometimes we think awakening has to be solemn. But some of the wisest masters I've known laughed more than they spoke. You glance at him, and some of them didn't talk at all. He grins. Exactly. A good chuckle can clear more karma than 100 perfect mantras. Then, more quietly, but only if it comes from love, he closes his eyes, resting his palms on his knees. You follow, drawing in a breath, letting it out slowly. For a while, you just sit. Not meditating, not analyzing, just breathing in the silence that feels more spacious, now more forgiving. After a few minutes, the Lama hums a single note, low, long. Then he opens his eyes and says, "One of my teachers used to laugh whenever someone tried too hard." You raise your brows, not out of cruelty, just delight. He saw how we wrestled with illusions like they were dragons, and he found it adorable. You chuckle, he smiles. Buddha said, "When you realize how perfect everything is, you will tilt your head back and laugh at the sky." The wind picks up. You look up. The sky stretches above you, huge and blue and wide open. Not perfect in the way your mind usually defines it, but perfect in the way a river bends, or a fire crackles, or your heart broken, as it sometimes feels, still beats. The Lama rises. "Come, let's walk with a little less seriousness now. Just for today." You follow, and as you do, you feel something loosen inside a grip you didn't know you were holding. A plan, maybe, an image of control. It starts to dissolve gently, like sugar in warm tea. The goat lets out a sudden and ridiculous bleat. You both burst out laughing, not to fix anything, just because you can. The laughter settles into your bones, like sunlight after rain, quiet, warming a little bit holy. The trail now is gentler, winding through fields of low, wild clover that brush your ankles with each step. Tiny white blossoms nod in the breeze, like sleepy monks in midday meditation. The Lama walks beside you, staff in hand, humming something tuneless and serene. The goat naturally has wandered off to inspect a bush with the dedication of a scholar reviewing sacred texts. You walk in silence for a while, feeling no need to fill the space. But then the Lama turns to you and says, "Would you like to offer a prayer?" You blink. "To who?" He smiles. "Not to four." You glance around. No temple, no altar. Just you, the trail, the breeze. A prayer, he continues, not for the ones you love, not even for yourself. For someone you've never met. You pause. "Why?" He shrugs. "Because that's where compassion becomes real." You stop walking. Let the moment settle. He reaches into the folds of his robe and pulls out a tiny strip of white cloth, faded frayed at the edges. He holds it out to you. "A prayer flag," he says, "from an old scarf I wore when my teacher passed." You take it gently, surprised by its softness. Think of someone, he says. Anyone. A stranger. Maybe someone far away, awake at this very moment. Maybe lonely, maybe not. Just someone. You close your eyes, feeling for a presence you'll never see. Someone stuck in traffic. Someone scrubbing dishes in silence. Someone crying in a stairwell phone in hand, not sure who to call. You don't know who it is, but suddenly they feel close. You open your eyes. Now the Lama says, "Breathe into the cloth." You do gently, as if whispering through your ribs. He takes the cloth back and ties it to a low branch nearby. The breeze picks it up, and it flutters softly, no louder than a moth's wings. "That's all it takes," he says, "a wish on the wind." You stand there with him, watching it dance. There's a story he begins, of course, about a woman who lost her son. She went to the Buddha, clutching him, begging him to bring the boy back. You nod. You've heard this one. He told her to gather a mustard seed from a household untouched by sorrow. She searched all night, all day, all week. She returned with empty hands, but something new in her eyes. The Lama touches the cloth flag again. She learned that compassion isn't about fixing pain. It's about joining hands in it. You think of your own heart, how tightly it's held itself some nights, how often it's longed to be seen, not saved. The Buddha said the Lama continues, "As a mother protects her child with her life, even so should one cultivate a boundless heart toward all beings." You nod slowly. He walks on, and you follow. Loving kindness, he says, isn't just a feeling. It's a practice, like brushing your teeth or remembering the names of people you'll never meet. You smile. "That sounds impossible," he grins. "Exactly." The goat trots ahead now, tail flicking. Somewhere nearby, a raven calls, once, then falls silent. You know, the Lama says, as he steps around a mossy boulder, "I used to imagine compassion was a warm, glowy thing, like a candle in the chest. But sometimes it feels more like a heavy stone in your pocket." You tilt your head. "You carry it," he says, "because someone else can't." You both step into a shaded alcove where vines curl over the rocks like sleepy fingers. In the center sits a small shrine, no more than a stack of stones, with a tiny wooden Buddha resting on top. Around it, dozens of little flags flutter in the breeze, some bright, some bleached to nothing. Each one, you realize, is a prayer for someone unseen. He reaches into a basket nearby, pulls out a thread and another scrap of cloth, and hands them to you. You hesitate, then write just a word. A name, maybe, or a wish. You don't share it aloud. You tie it carefully, and it joins the soft chorus of wind-born hope. The Lama stands back, satisfied. You both listen to the sound the flags make, like pages being turned gently, eternally, by an invisible hand. Then he asks, "What would happen if your love stopped needing a face?" You don't answer. The question folds itself into your breath like silk. You begin walking again, and this time, the world feels less like a place to conquer, and more like someone else's heart waiting to be held. You walk without hurry, now the wind soft at your back, and the earth humming beneath your soles. The Lama leads you through a narrow pass where moss carpets the stones like green velvet. The goat brings up the rear, trailing behind in slow meandering zigs and zags, as if mapping its own private pilgrimage. Soon the trail opens into a clearing. At its center lies a pond still round and perfectly silent. Not a ripple stirs its surface. It mirrors the sky above so clearly that for a moment you forget which way is up. The Lama lowers himself onto a flat stone at the pond's edge, resting his hands on his knees. You follow suit, drawn to the stillness, as if it's calling your name without sound. This, he says, is a good place to practice not needing anything. You glance sideways. That sounds difficult. He smiles. Which is why we practice. You sit in silence, watching the pond, noticing how it doesn't rush, doesn't strive, just reflects. Let's try something the Lama says. Look into the water, but not at yourself. Look beyond your reflection. You lean forward, careful not to disturb the surface. At first, all you see is your face softened by the light, distorted slightly by the curve of water. But then beyond that, the shadows of trees, the drifting clouds above, the silhouette of a bird gliding past without urgency. Good, the Lama says. Now, let go of the labels. No tree, no sky, no you. Just watch. You do. Something begins to shift. Your mind loosens its grip. You stop narrating, stop naming, and the world becomes quieter, yet more alive. The Lama speaks again. There's a story, he begins his voice, barely louder than breath, about a painter who tried to capture the stillness of a pond. Of course there is. He painted for years. Water reads sky. But no matter how skilled he became, the painting always felt noisy. Until one day, he stopped painting and just sat by the pond for hours, days. You can imagine him, brush forgotten, sitting with eyes wide open and hands empty. When he returned to the canvas, the Lama says he painted nothing. You blink, just the blank paper. And under it, he wrote, "This is the pond that knows." You look down again. The water reflects without effort, takes nothing, gives nothing, just is. The Buddha said the Lama continues, "When the mind is still, the truth shines clearly like the moon in a quiet pond." You sit back, slightly exhaling. Stillness, not the kind you achieve with force. The kind you remember, like a song you used to know by heart. He reaches into his robe and pulls out a small, smooth stone, places it gently at the water's edge. The pond doesn't cling to the reflection, he says. It doesn't panic when the wind disturbs it. It just waits and settles. You think of your own thoughts, how quickly they stir the surface. A worry, a memory, a need, ripples. Most of us live on the surface of the pond, he says, caught in the waves. But when we remember that we are the pond, everything changes. The goat sneezes again behind you. Ripples tickle the edges of the pond, then fade. You smile. There's no teaching here to memorize, no mantra to chant, just water and sky and a mind learning to reflect instead of react. He looks over at you. You're doing well, he says. You raise an eyebrow. I haven't done anything. He nods. Exactly. He picks up a stick and traces a circle in the soft earth. Thoughts will come, he says, like leaves on the pond. You don't need to stop them. Just stop chasing them. The wind lifts, and a single leaf falls from a nearby tree, landing gently on the surface of the pond. It floats there, not drowning, not clinging, just floating. You both watch it for a long time. Eventually, the Lama asks, "When was the last time you let your mind be still, without needing it to be useful?" The question doesn't land like a challenge. It lands like a hand on your back. Gentle, supportive. You don't answer. Just keep watching the leaf. It drifts slowly across the water, passing your reflection. Then the goat's, which is staring at it with unusual seriousness, then disappears into a patch of light. "Come," the Lama says, rising slowly. Stillness is lovely, but life is calling. You stand, leaving no footprints behind. The pond remains, watching, waiting, reflecting, and as you walk away, you realize it wasn't just water. It was a mirror, the kind that shows you what you forgot you already were. The trail away from the pond leads uphill, winding through a grove of skeletal trees, with bare branches stretched out like arms, mid-gesture, reaching, releasing, remembering. Their leaves are long gone, scattered, who knows where, composting quietly into something new. You walk beside the Lama in silence, but the kind that feels alive, like space inside a bell, just before it's rung. After a while, he speaks. "Do you see these trees?" You nod. "Do they look sad to you?" You glance around, a little, bare. He chuckles. Or maybe just resting. You pause, taking that in. The word resting lands in your bones like warm soup. He touches the trunk of one tree as he passes. Every autumn, they let go of what no longer serves, without drama, without apologies. You step closer to one. Run your fingers along its bark. The surface is rough, weathered, beautiful, in that quiet, dignified way older things become. And do you think the Lama continues that in letting go, the tree loses something? You glance up into the empty branches, sky showing through like stained glass. Maybe, you say. He raises an eyebrow. Or maybe the tree simply knows that spring needs space. That line hits like a wind chime, soft, sudden, clear. He stops beneath one particularly wild tree, where the branches twist together like folded hands. The ground is carpeted with brittle leaves. each one curled in on itself, like a secret. There's a folk tale, he says, settling onto a flat stone about a woman who couldn't let go. Of course there is. She lived in a small cottage and filled it with every object she'd ever loved. Old clothes, letters, wilted flowers, broken pots, even the crumbs of birthday cakes. Long eaten, you picture her an entire home filled with memories fossilized into clutter. She didn't want to lose anything, the Lama says. So she kept everything. You nod, quietly recognizing the feeling. But soon there was no room left for anything new. No space for guests. No space for light. Even her own body couldn't fully stretch. He picks up a leaf and turns it over in his fingers. One day, the wind knocked her door open, and a gust swept through the house. Some papers flew away. A vase shattered. A dress was lifted into the trees. He pauses, holding the leaf still. She chased the wind for hours, sobbing. But when she returned, she could breathe again. You say nothing. The image is enough. She didn't lose, the Lama says. She simply made space. You crouch and pick up a leaf yourself. Its golden brown, delicate veins etched like roads on an old map. What am I still carrying, you whisper? He hears you. Only you know, he says. But here's a clue. If it tightens your chest, if it dims your light, if it lives more in memory than in possibility. Maybe it's autumn. You exhale. That soft kind of breath that's been waiting to come out. He looks out over the hill where more trees sway gently in the breeze. The Buddha said, just as a snake sheds its skin, we must shed again and again everything we believe ourselves to be. You sit beside him, the leaf still in your hand. Do you think the tree grieves its leaves? He asks. You tilt your head. Maybe. He nods. Maybe a little. But grief is not the same as resistance. Grief is the song of letting go sung with love. The goat bleats nearby, apparently objecting to the philosophical mood. You both smile. I once clung to a version of myself, the Lama says, eyes soft. A monk who never doubted, who never failed, who never got sleepy in meditation or irritable during tea preparation. You chuckle. I held that image so tightly, he continues, that I couldn't breathe around it. Then, one day, I let it fall like a leaf, and the wind thanked me. You imagine your own leaves, the stories, the old titles, the ways you've tried to be lovable, successful enough. You imagine them falling slowly, curling and turning as they go. What remains when everything else falls away? You ask. He closes his eyes. Only what's true. The trees above seem to nod, and then he asks in that soft voice that always lands like water on thirsty ground, is letting go truly a loss, or the beginning of peace? You don't speak, but the way your hand loosens around the leaf says, enough. You both rise, and as you walk on, you hear the wind through the trees, not like a whisper, but like applause. The trail narrows again, folding between two steep ridges where the sun filters through in slanted beams. It's late afternoon now, and everything is golden. The rocks, the grass, even your breath seems tinged with amber as it leaves your lips. The Lama walks ahead with a slower gait, like the day itself is winding down. You notice something familiar tucked beneath his arm, the mirror. You hadn't seen it in a while, but there it is, its frame dulled with age, its surface once again blurred with dust. He carries it, not like a possession, but like an old friend, one who's grown quiet over time, but still follows faithfully. He doesn't say anything at first, just sets the mirror down on a flat rock and kneels in front of it. You kneel beside him, curious. He leans forward, breathes softly across the glass. The dust shifts but doesn't lift. He doesn't try again. It comes back, he says. You look at him, the dust, you nod. He places one hand on the frame, almost tenderly. Even the clearest mind gathers dust. That's not failure. That's weather. You stare into the mirror. At first, just blur. Then, slowly, your reflection begins to emerge, wavering, like a memory underwater. Your eyes, your hair, but not quite how you looked in the bathroom this morning. Softer, somehow, more honest, more tired, and more alive. You're not broken, the Lama says. You're just dusty from living. A breeze picks up, carrying the scent of dry earth and juniper. The goat plods by unimpressed by either revelation or reflection. You clean it, he says, not to be perfect, just to see more clearly. You reach forward, fingertips brushing the glass. The dust smears slightly, and for a moment, the reflection is gone. In its place, sky, cloud, light. You see, he says. Even dust tells a story. You look at him. He continues gently. The dust shows where you've been, who you've touched, what you've carried, and yet you say, we always try to wipe it away. He nods. We confuse clarity with purity. But sometimes the mirror is most beautiful when it holds both the light and the dust. He sits back, stretching his legs. There's an old story, he says, about a monk who spent his whole life polishing a mirror, day and night, never resting. You listen. People would visit him and ask for teachings, and he would say nothing, just polish. For years. One day, a student finally asked, "What's the point of this mirror?" You wait. The monk smiled and said, "When I stop polishing, you'll forget how to see." You frown a little. So, keep polishing. The Lama chuckles. No. The teaching wasn't about the mirror. It was about attention. The way you care for a thing shapes how it shows itself to you. You look at the mirror again, at the way the light catches in the streaks of dust. You realize it's not about wiping it clean once and forever. It's about tending to it like a garden, like a friendship, like your own heart. The Buddha said the Lama murmurs, "If you see clearly, you are freed. If you cling to clarity, you are trapped." You let the words settle. He picks up the mirror and offers it to you. You hesitate. Then you hold it in both hands. It feels heavier than before. Not burdensome, just full. Like a bowl that's been filled by quiet years. You look in again, not for answers, just to see. And what you see surprises you. Not perfection, not flaws, just presence. A face softened by the wind, marked by laughter and worry, smudged with time, and still shining beneath it all. You exhale slowly. The mirror fogs for a moment with your breath. The Lama smiles. Then softly he asks, "What if your wholeness was never about staying clean, but staying close to your true reflection?" You sit with that, holding the mirror gently. Then, just as gently, you set it back down. The dust will return, but now it no longer feels like a flaw. It feels like evidence that you've lived, that you've loved, that you're still here. The sun is dipping now, casting a warm, honeyed light over everything. You and the Lama walk slowly, your steps falling into rhythm with the long shadows that stretch behind you. The goat trudges along at a distance, more companionable now, as though it too is finally content to simply be. You come to a gentle slope where the grass is soft and the air carries a sleepy kind of stillness. The Lama gestures to a patch of ground beneath a leaning tree and settles there with a satisfied sigh. You sit beside him. He doesn't speak for a moment, just stares out over the horizon, where golden light pools like tea in the folds of the land. Then he draws something from his robe, folded cloth, this time, not the mirror. He unfolds it slowly, reverently, until it reveals itself a cushion. Old, faded, frayed along the seams, but clearly loved. He lays it between you and taps it with his palm. "This," he says, "is my pillow of compassion." You smile at the simplicity of the phrase. "That's what you sleep on." He chuckles. "Sometimes, but mostly I offer it to guests when their hearts need rest more than their heads." You glance at the cushion again. There's nothing impressive about it. No embroidery, no sacred symbols, just worn cotton and the faint smell of sandalwood and thyme. He pats it once more. "Want to try?" You nod. He gestures for you to scoot closer, to rest your hands or your head, if you'd like, on the cushion. You do. Your palms press into the soft fabric. It's warm from the sun and strangely grounding, like touching something that remembers being part of the earth. "Compassion," he says gently, isn't about fixing anything. You look up at him. It's about being willing to sit beside what hurts. He continues, without pulling away, without making it wrong. You let your fingers rest on the cushion, noticing the places where the fabric has thinned. There's a story, he says, voice soft, about a young woman who carried sorrow like a stone in her chest. She tried everything to get rid of it. Prayers, fasts, advice from teachers. Still, it sat there, heavy, quiet. You listen, until one day, an old nun placed a cushion beside her and said, "Sit with your sorrow. Let it tell its story." You glance at the pillow beneath your hands. She cried for hours, days, but not out of pain, out of relief. Because for the first time, she wasn't trying to escape. She was listening. The wind moves through the tree above you. The branches shift gently, letting the last bits of sunlight scatter across your face. The Buddha said the Lama adds, "If your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete." The words feel soft but firm, like the cushion itself. How often, he asks, do you offer others patience? You won't give yourself. You don't answer, but your breath changes. He continues. Compassion begins with this. He taps the ground with sitting down, with resting your story in your own lap. Not to analyze it, not to defend it, just to hold it. Like a tired friend, you look back down at the pillow. You think of all the nights you've tried to solve your sorrow, like a puzzle. All the times you made your heart into a project, as if healing only counts when it's productive. But now, this is different. No demands, no fixing, just a soft place to let your story rest. You whisper, "What if I never finish healing?" The Lama smiles with such warmth that it makes your throat tighten. Then you keep resting, he says, and you keep loving yourself as you are. Even unfinished things are worthy. You close your eyes, let your shoulders drop. Feel the fabric beneath your fingertips. Then you hear him murmur, "When was the last time you offered your pain a place to lie down?" The question echoes in the hollow space beneath your ribs. You open your eyes. The sun is nearly gone now. Just a red sliver melting behind the mountains. You both sit a while longer, silent, as if speaking might scare the moment away. Eventually, he folds the pillow, gently presses it to his chest, and tucks it back into his robe. Then he stands. "Come," he says. "It's time we made our way to the temple. You'll want to hear the bell." You rise beside him, lighter, not because the burden is gone, but because it's been seen, held, and for once allowed to rest. The sky now wears its evening shawl, soft navy, stitched with the first stars. The air has cooled, and the scent of pine and far-off fires lingers like a memory you can't quite place. You walk beside the Lama on a gently rising path, your steps slower now, as if your body knows the day is winding down. He says nothing for a while, his hands tucked into his sleeves, gaze turned toward the growing dark. The goat has wandered off again, likely on a holy errand of its own. At the top of the hill, nestled between two great stones, you see it, a small mountain temple. It isn't grand or gilded. There are no golden statues, no gates, no guards. Just weathered wood, prayer flags faded to pastels, and a soft glow spilling from a single butter lamp inside. But something about it feels vast, infinite even, as though every silence you've ever known lives here. The Lama walks to the threshold and stops. There's a bell inside, he says, voice lowered by reverence. But it doesn't have a striker. You blink. How does it ring? He smiles. Only when the wind is just right. He pushes open the creaking door and gestures for you to follow. Inside the space is dim, filled with the scent of cedar melted wax and sandalwood. Woven mats line the floor. On a raised platform sits a single, simple bronze bell, tall, slender, and worn to a soft patina. You sit across from it, legs folded beneath you. The Lama lowers himself beside you, hands resting on his knees. He doesn't speak, doesn't even breathe loudly. You wait, and in that stillness, the bell becomes the center of the universe. No chime, no sound, just presence. He finally whispers, "This is the bell of surrender." You look at him. It doesn't ring because of effort, he says. It rings because it's willing to be touched. You let that ripple through your mind. The Buddha said, he continues, when you realize nothing is lacking, the whole world belongs to you. But we spend our days striking everything we can, trying to make life ring. You glance at the bell again. Quiet. Waiting. Inviting. He nods toward it. The lesson isn't in its silence. It's in what moves it. You look toward the doorway. The wind shifts, barely perceptible. A prayer flag flutters. The hair on your arms rises. Then, just barely, the bell sounds, a single, soft tone. So pure, it pierces you. It hums through the sponge or through your breath, through your ribs. The note doesn't ask for anything. It just arrives and leaves. You don't realize you've been holding your breath until it's gone. The Lama smiles. Do you understand? He asks. You nod. Maybe you do. Maybe surrender is not about giving up, but about letting go of the hammer, letting life, just life, touch you when the moment comes. He folds his hands in his lap. There's a tale, he says, about a dancer who never took a single step. She would stand on stage, eyes closed, and wait. The wind would move the curtain, the light would shift, and in that moment, just for a breath, she would sway. He closes his eyes. She was famous not for her moves, but for her stillness, for her trust that the dance would begin without her command. You feel something loosen deep in your chest. Control, maybe, or the need to always know. She once said, he adds, that surrender is not a retreat. It's a bow to something more intelligent than your plans. The bell remains quiet now, but it doesn't feel absent, just full. You both sit in that silence, breathing with it. Then he asks, barely louder than the wind, what might happen if you stopped striking and simply opened to the wind? You don't answer aloud, but a part of you rings, not like a shout, more like a bell that's waited a long time to be heard. You sit with it, grateful, empty, alive. You step outside the little mountain temple with the Lama, just as the last light drains from the sky. The stars arrive slowly, as if called by name. Each one appears not with fanfare, but with quiet authority, like an old friend returning without explanation. The air is cooler now, crisp, the kind that wakes your skin and calms your thoughts. Behind you, the temple door creaks shut. The bell inside sleeps again, awaiting another soft invitation. The Lama walks ahead, not saying much, just humming a faint tune with no melody. The goat trails behind this time, unusually quiet, as if even it knows that something inside you is shifting. You follow a winding trail that leads to a low hill, one last gentle climb. At the top waits the mirror, same one, oval, dusty, quiet, set atop a stone pedestal that wasn't there before. You approach slowly. The wind brushes your face. It feels like a hand, like a memory, like a final page turning. The Lama stops a few steps behind you. Doesn't come closer, just watches. You kneel in front of the mirror, but this time you don't try to clean it. Don't try to adjust your face or tilt your head or find something profound inside. You just look. At first, dust, soft streaks and particles lit by moonlight. Then your reflection, but not like before. Not a version of you that you're trying to get back to. Not the tired one from this morning, or the younger one waiting in sunbeams. This time, it's no version at all. It's just you, looking, being looked at, and something else too, behind your reflection, or maybe through it, something moves. It doesn't take shape, doesn't speak, but it feels familiar. It feels like everything, like wind and breath and the color of compassion. You blink and the surface goes clear. No dust, no reflection, just the mirror itself, empty, full. Still, you hear the Lama step closer. He places one hand on your shoulder and says softly, "There it is." You whisper, "What?" The mirror, without a face. You look up at him. "Now do you see?" he asks. You don't nod, don't speak, but you understand. What the mirror's been showing you all along wasn't a picture, it was presence. You, without striving, without stories, without labels or fixing or needing to be anything else. You sit back, breathing in the night. The goat lets out a sleepy grunt and lies down. The Lama settles beside you, his robes brushing yours. Buddha said he murmurs, "Look within. You are the light." You don't question it anymore. You just sit under the stars, by the mirror, without a face, and the world around you grows still, not because it stops, but because you've stopped needing it to be anything but what it is. Finally, the Lama speaks again, almost a whisper. What if the truest reflection is the one that disappears when you stop needing to see yourself? You don't answer. There's no need, because now the wind is the answer, the silence is the answer, and your breath is still here, alive, exactly as it is. The wind softens now, curling around your body, like a shawl stitched from nightfall and breath. The stars blink above you, not urgently, not loudly, just enough to remind you that everything is still here, still unfolding, still part of the same rhythm. You feel your body begin to melt downward into the earth beneath you. Your limbs grow heavy. Your thoughts stretch out long and slow, like shadows at dusk. The Lama doesn't say anything more. He just sits beside you, presence as calm and constant as moonlight on water. In the distance, you hear the faintest chime, perhaps the bell again, perhaps your own heart echoing into stillness. There's nothing left to do, nothing left to prove. You've followed the story where it needed to go. You've listened gently, let go, sat still, loved what needed loving, and now you can rest. The mirror stays beside you, but you don't need to look, because there's nothing left to see, nothing to chase, nothing to fix. Only this quiet, this wholeness, this breath. Let your eyes close now, gently. Let the world outside dissolve like mist at dawn. You're not lost. You're not broken. You're simply here, exactly as you are, exactly as you've always been. May your dreams be soft, and your heart even softer. Good night, dear one.